Now, there are three basic distortions that perpetuate specific fears. First of all, number one, we overestimate a negative outcome. So we overestimate the odds of something bad happening. So we think, what if this happens? What if that happens? Secondly, we catastrophize. We think if a negative outcome did occur, it would be overwhelming and unmanageable. For example, I couldn't handle it. I'd be overwhelmed. I'd never live it down. They'll never forgive me if that happens. And thirdly, we underestimate our ability to cope. So we don't recognize or acknowledge our ability to cope if a negative outcome did, in fact, occur. So fears are often the unreasonable overestimating of some threat, coupled with an underestimation of your ability to cope. So what do we do with these three basic distortions? Well, first of all, with the overestimating of a negative outcome, what we want to do is ask ourselves, viewing the situation objectively, stepping back from the emotion and viewing it from a more cognitive place, what are the odds of the negative outcome actually happening? Let's say someone is very anxious because they had a car accident. And let's say they drove for 10 years with no accident, and now they had one accident. Now they're afraid of another accident, and it's hard for them to get behind the wheel because they're, what if I have another accident? What if I have another accident? Is their fear. So they're overestimating the odds of another accident. So really viewing the situation objectively, what really are the odds of another accident? Well, if it's one accident in 10 years of driving, the odds are pretty low. Secondly, catastrophizing, thinking there's no way I could handle it if I had another one. Well, the question is, if the worst did happen, is it actually true that I couldn't handle it? And thirdly, when we underestimate our ability to cope, what we want to do is identify and list specific ways in which you could cope. And as you face your fears and plan ways to cope, take stock of your strengths, those qualities that can help you during an emergency or a difficult time. You can ask yourself, well, how have I coped in past difficult times? How has God gotten me through past difficulties? Take note of your supports and your abilities. And try to change your self-talk from what if this happens, to what I would do if. Sometimes the what if thoughts become overwhelming, and it's hard to stop them. It's hard to stop the cycle. So there's something called thought stopping, and what people have found helpful sometimes is to have like an elastic around your wrist, and when the thoughts start really swirling, what you can do is pull that elastic and give yourself a little shock. Even say the word stop out loud or picture a stop sign. That's usually quite effective to stop the pattern of thoughts. Then you can replace those thoughts with a statement that's helpful. And you can focus on what you can control. So say you're behind the wheel and you're anxious about another accident. Well, what can I control here? Well, I can breathe deeply and calm myself down with deep breathing. I can put on some calming music. And I can remind myself that it's quite unlikely, the odds are quite unlikely that I'll have another accident. And I can have soothing self-talk such as, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things that God calls me to through Jesus who gives me strength. So these are ways that you can cope with those anxious thoughts. Another thing that is really helpful for people is to have a worry chair or a worry time. It's a way to control your worry instead of it controlling you. So basically, if you're going throughout your day and these what if thoughts are kind of bothering you, what you can do is say, okay, I'm going to put that thought on the shelf, and tonight from 7 till let's say 7:20 in my chair, in my worry chair, I'm going to have my pen and paper, and during that time I'm going to give all my focus and attention to that worry. And that way, it's like you get on top of the worry. So for 20 minutes, you have your journal and your pen, and you spend that time specifically only focusing on your worries. You can write all your what ifs, all those worries out, and really focus on them. And often, by the end of the time, or even before the end of the time, People get kind of tired of just focusing on their worries. And it's a very effective way of coping with those thoughts. But sometimes anxiety can be so severe and so prolonged that professional help is needed. So don't hesitate to consult your doctor if you find yourself unable to control your anxiety or to handle it. So the third type of negative self-talk is called the critic. Now the critic leads to low self-esteem, and it's constantly judging you all the time. It tends to point out your flaws and limitations whenever possible. It compares you with others and usually sees others coming out favorably. It tends to ignore your positive qualities and emphasizes your weaknesses and inadequacies. So it's thoughts like, you're too much this way, you're always doing this, can't you ever get it right? Now it's important to have a clear perspective of both our strengths and weaknesses. So I'm drawing a circle here, and there's a top to the circle and a bottom, and there's pieces. So it's like a pie or a pizza. Now the top half represents the good qualities that you're born with. The bottom half represents your struggles. What are your good qualities? What are the things that you enjoy? What are the gifts, talents, and abilities that you were created with? What do you like about yourself? You can ask people, what do they like about you? It's important to recognize the good that God has created within you and to fill in these pieces. Psalm 139 says that God says that we are wonderfully made. Every human being on the planet has slices on both sides of the pizza. It's no use comparing ourselves to others because we're all in the same boat. We all have wonderful qualities that God's created us with, and we all have our struggles. Some of our gifts and struggles might be more visible than others, but we all have both. It's very important for healthy self-esteem to stop comparing yourself with others. We either feel we're better than other people or that we're worse than others. And there's no way that we can see the whole situation accurately. So what some people do, they'll take one of their struggles and they'll act like it's all of them. They'll think it's a cognitive distortion. So let's just say that someone struggles with anger. So they'll say, okay, one of my struggles is anger management. I don't manage it well and I'm working on that. But what we can tend to do sometimes is to say, you know what, I'm just this angry, horrible person. That's what I am. I'm just an angry person and that's who I am. And instead of seeing that as it's a part of them, but it's just a part. There's other struggles too, and there's so many good parts. Instead of seeing it in balance, they see it distorted. They have tunnel vision. And that is a cognitive distortion. The other thing is, low self-esteem comes from when we compare one of our weaknesses with another person's strength. And that's just not fair because they have strength, they have weaknesses too, and we have strengths. And again, we're all in the same boat. There's no use judging ourselves or others. And finally, the last type of negative self-talk is the victim. So the victim promotes depression. It leaves you feeling tired, depressed, and overwhelmed. It tries to convince you that you're powerless to do anything about your life. It's words like, I can't, I'll never be able to. And again, you can try to replace the I can't self-talk with something like I won't. So let's just say you have a huge list of things to do and you're just feeling exhausted. And instead of saying, you know, I can't do all this today and feeling very powerless, it's good to say, you know what, it's too much and I won't do it all today. It gives you more of a sense of control. The other thing you can do is remind yourself that with God's help, you can make positive choices that will affect your life. Now, people with the victim self-talk often struggle with perfectionism, and they have this pattern where they push themselves. I should, I have to, I must, go, 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 and then they crash and they get exhausted. And then maybe for a few days they just, can't get out of bed. It's like, I just can't do this, I just can't do this. And then back to go, 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 should. And then this can become a pattern. So we need to look at the wrong belief under perfectionism to deal with the victim as well. So now you may just struggle with one or two of these, or you may struggle with all four. But the key is that we want to be aware of what we're thinking. And we want to take the thoughts captive so we can make changes that we need to, which will affect our stress level. So we want to remember that our thoughts and feelings are connected, but we need to treat both very differently. We need to separate them, and we need to treat them differently. Feelings are words like mad, sad, glad, scared, guilty, sorry. Thoughts are how we think about ourselves, others, and our situation. So that concludes our presentation, and may God give you wisdom as you learn to manage the stress in your life. Thank you.